Hi and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today we're taking a look at a vintage inspired model from an Italian brand called Fonderia Lab. They make jewelry and mostly vintage inspired watches, with this, called the Professor, being the most vintage of them all. With a look that seems lifted from the 50s, and this combination of a silver dial and rose gold markers, it is just breathtakingly beautiful. Yes, I am a sucker for these types of watches simply because I believe the 50s and 60s gave us some of the most beautiful watches ever made, like the Omega Pi Pen models and Longines models that were recreated with their heritage line. This watch follows the same design language, so it's no wonder I like it. The dial is silver and features a sunburst effect, with the inner part being sunken to give some depth to it. The rose gold markers and hands create a nice contrast, making it easy to read, while the minute hashes printed closer to the inner part of the dial give a feeling of precision, as you can always read them exactly, without guessing, unlike many watches today that suffer from hands that end too far from their markers. Overall, the dial and everything on it is well finished, with some foreign material visible only under macro. But given how many Rolex watches look under macro, this is more than acceptable. The text is kept to a minimum, and I love the font used for the brand name. The acrylic crystal gives off a warm hue, making the watch look even more true to its vintage originals, but I would prefer if they used a more modern mineral or even sapphire, as this will get scratched up easily, especially given the fact it is domed quite a bit. The case is also vintage inspired, meaning simple, polished all over, with only the lugs creating a bit of originality with the way they continue into the case itself. The only thing making this watch lose its vintage vibe are the dimensions. With a 40mm diameter and 46.7mm lug to lug, it is by no means too big and will wear without the lugs overhanging your wrist no matter how small it is. But with this huge dial and a thin bezel, it looks enormous on my 6.7-inch wrist, almost like a pilot's watch, and that is the first serious thing I don't like about it. I own and wear a couple of vintage pieces from the 60s, and their 35mm diameter makes them perfect on my wrist, while this simply looks too big. If, however, you have larger wrists and always liked the look of vintage pieces but found them too small, this might work for you. Another plus of the large diameter is the fact it makes the watch appear slim, even though at 12.5 in thickness it is anything but slim, on paper at least. Another thing I don't like about this is the fact they went with a transparent caseback, as it reveals just how much smaller the movement is compared to the watch. The movement itself is okay. It is a Miyota 6015, a 28,800 bph movement that comes with hand winding but no hacking. Sadly, the floating seconds hand means you will see the seconds hand sometimes move forward a bit, especially when setting the watch or exposing it to shock. This doesn't affect the timekeeping, as the cogs catch up to it, but it does look weird, especially if you never experienced this type of movement before. My Vostok Amphibia does the same, and at first I was worried, but I got used to it, and now I simply ignore it. On this, however, the jumping is more noticeable when the power reserve is low, while it almost completely disappears when the watch is fully wound, while on the Amphibia, it is always there. The Professor comes in both quartz and mechanical versions, and with a wide selection of case and dial variants, with this and the silver dial blue hands one being my favorite. The prices vary from about $120 for the quartz all the way to $250 for the mechanical versions. If it was smaller and came with a more modern crystal, I might consider it as a more robust daily wear alternative to my vintage pieces. But if I'm gonna be scratching and buffing out the acrylic crystal anyway, I might as well wear my vintage pieces that fit my wrist the way I like them to fit. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and until the next video, bye.